Good morning, everyone, and a very, very warm welcome once again to the AISS 2021. It is day 3 and also the final day of this 3-day webinar. And we hope you're all keeping safe and healthy. It is the pandemic time. We request you to follow COVID appropriate behavior and stay healthy and fine. And like I said, it is day 3 of the AISS 2021, where we once again promise you a day which is going to be full of learning and meaningful discussions. We would like to begin by extending a very warm welcome to all of our delegates and speakers and sponsors, exhibitors, all of our partners who have helped us making this program a success. And thank you for your support. We'd like to begin by thanking you all. And of course, we'd also like to congratulate the winners of the DSCI Excellence Awards 2021. All of you who've won totally deserved it. And thank you for being a part of AISS 2021. Once again, heartiest congratulations from the entire team. Now, before I begin, I'd also like to remind you that the leaderboard is where you can accumulate gold coins, points. If you can see on the top right corner of your screen, there is a stack of gold coins, which is the leaderboard. You can refer to the points distribution chart and find out how you can accumulate more and more coins before AISS 2021 wraps up. And there is still opportunity the entire day. All you have to do is be active on the platform and be a part of AISS 2021, and the top 3 winners get to win cash prizes. And of course, please feel free to share your feedback, your experience on social media using the hashtag AISS 2021. Do not forget to tag us at the rate DSCI_Connect. That's our Twitter handle. So that's what you can do. You can also tag us online and share with us your experience at AISS 2021. Of course, feedback is welcome so that we can serve you better in future. And like I've been saying for the past 2 days, we are virtual. That does not by any means mean that there is not opportunity for networking. There is immense opportunity for networking. You can go to the lobby and you can definitely meet and interact with your peers on this platform called as AISS 2021. And with that, without any further ado, let us begin with our first session today. It is the plenary session on fraud frontiers, rising digital footprints and fraud possibilities. Now, this plenary session, we are being joined by this morning Mr. Anuj Bhansali, Head of Trust and Safety at PhonePe, Dr. Bal Singh Rajput, DCP Technology and Crime Prevention at Mumbai Police, will also be sharing with us his expertise. Dr. V. Sridhar is Professor Center for IT and Public Policy at CIT APP, International Institute of Information Technology, VAR, and Tamagna Basu is co-founder and CEO at Data Secure. So that is once again an esteemed panel joining us this morning, and Dr. B. Sridhar will be moderating the session for us. So without any further ado, let me hand it over to you, Dr. Sridhar, to take this panel discussion forward.
Thank you very much, Samriddhi. Thanks for your warm welcome, and many thanks to NASSCOM DSCI as well as the organizers of AISS 2021 for organizing this particular plenary session on fraud frontiers, rising digital footprints and fraud possibilities. Right. So we have seen rising digital footprints, especially in fintech, health tech, because of COVID and other reasons in the recent times. But associated with these digital footprints are also cyber crimes, cyber frauds, which are happening over a period of time. So in the last 2 days, you must have heard from various speakers on very specific cyber frauds and cyber crime happenings in the country and worldwide. But today we have an esteemed panel which will go into some of the details. So first, I would like to invite Dr. Bal Singh Rajput, as Samriddhi has said, is the Deputy Commissioner of Police, Technology and Crime Prevention at Mumbai Police. So he has first-hand experience of building some 51 cyber labs and 43 cyber police stations for cybercrime investigation in the state of Maharashtra. He has led the implementation of the automatic multimodal biometric identification system project. He is also a key member of the team of Maharashtra Cybersecurity Project for the development of an integrated cybersecurity environment for the state through Maharashtra Computer Emergency Response Team, predictive policing solution, and setting up Center of Excellence in Cybersecurity. He was also part of the cybersecurity delegation of India to Israel in 2016 and Estonia in 2019. He's the team lead of Maharashtra Cyber Digital Crime Unit to develop anti-piracy solutions, which won the IP Champions Award of the USA Chamber of Commerce. He's a Sherning Cybersecurity Fellow 2017 of UK, an International Visiting Leadership Program Fellow of the US for Cybersecurity in 2019. Dr. Paul Singh Rajput has a PhD from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. So I hereby welcome Dr. Rajput onto the stage, and we would like to hear from you, sir, on some of the popular crimes which are on the rise in India and elsewhere. Especially, we have seen a huge exponential growth of ransomware and phishing attacks in the recent times. So, can you please throw us some light for about 5 minutes or so on this? Over to you, sir.
Namaskar. Thank you, sir, for a nice introduction, sir. Uh, India, being one of the populous country, and internet penetration has gone deep. Uh, if you see, the rural areas also are well penetrated with the internet due to revolution in mobile phone technology and spread of wireless networks. So, if you see for last 20 years, how the cybercrime have progressed in India, the law came in 2000, and from 2000 onwards, if you see the statistical figures, it is growing by 100 percent each year. So this every year, even though the portion in a total crime volume of cybercrime is less, but it is alarming that it is growing in exponential speed is the first point. Second point is that the crimes that were happening offline now are happening online. As 5 years before, the financial transactions were not penetrated well and were not happening through mobiles and were not available on fingertips. Now the financial transactions are available on fingertips. The financial frauds have grown exponentially. If you want to see that which crimes trending in India, first is online and social media frauds is the first. Second, the financial frauds through online means. Third is hacking or damage to the computers, particularly data leaks, data we can say stealing is a third important crime. Fourth one is online gambling and online loan apps that are creating rampant cheating. Then the fifth one is cryptocurrency crime is also draining the wealth of India. There are genuine coins, there are fake coins, and from 2016 onward, many people have been duped. Then ransomware for last 5 years has hit many important businesses, including the critical infrastructure like JNPT and some of the medical installations. And then last one is cyber terrorism through social media. If you see, there are everyday Twitter trends which are being conducted to manipulate the opinion, manipulation during the election, manipulation for a cause to create law and order. These are the important, we can say, crimes that are happening. Now, coming to the second part of the question is about ransomwares and phishing. Yeah, first I will tackle the phishing. Phishing has grown into a organized crime. Not now. It is not done by a single person. Now there are call center coming up. There are gangs, particularly situated, and some places in India like Mewat, like Bharatpur, like Girib, like Jamtara, some part of the Noida, some part of Mumbai have come up as an cottage industry, and the how the erstwhile gangsters were controlling the areas. Now these online syndicates are specializing. Some are specializing in sextortion, some are specializing in OLX fraud, some are specializing in debit credit fraud, some are specializing in matrimonial frauds. So this is the quantum and the way the fishing industry, particularly now we have to call it a fishing crime industry, because its turnover is huge in India. And the people who are involved are not well illiterate, but there are classes, and you will be amazed that there are training classes going on, that how to conduct the fishing crime. So this is very alarming and very shocking from a common man's point of view, and even from law enforcement point of view. We need very thorough and very dedication and resolute action against the, if you want to see the digital lessen the digital divide and grow the digital footprints of India. Second, coming to ransomware, I will finish in 30 seconds, sir. Ransomware is one of the most complicated and unsolved crime till date in India. I have not seen a single case detected and resolved and taken to the logical conclusion elsewhere also in the world regarding ransomware. There are few attributions, but attribution is the most important aspect in criminal investigation, and that is very difficult in case of ransomware. Maybe due to the encryption, maybe due to the anonymity of the networks, like using Tor and all things, or maybe the way the payload is dropped. Due to all these things, the ransomware has become one of the most, we can say, a lethal weapon in the arsenal of the criminals, particularly the international syndicates who are targeting particularly few countries and few establishment, particularly critical national critical establishment. It has become a lethal weapon. So that is my view, and the only thing presently we have, apart from having some solutions that are on technology side, we have the most important aspect that we can contribute is awareness and cyber hygiene to of the people working in a organization or in a society. Yeah, that's my take. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rajput. You have given a very good beginning to this particular session. In fact, you have mentioned the increase in cyber crimes, especially in the areas of ransomware, phishing, and you have also discussed about this, how it has become an organized crime, especially in places like Mewar, Rajasthan, and so on. Right. So it is very shocking to in fact listen to you saying that there are classes which are being held for these purposes. So it is really shocking. And you also pointed out some of the challenges in cyber forensics, especially in the case of ransomware. So we'll come back and discuss with you more on this later. So next, I will invite Mr. Anuj Bansali, who is the head of trust and safety, financial crime at PhonePe. So he has been involved in the anti-fraud financial crime domain for the past decade and oversees areas related to trust, identity, safety, security, with the focus on securing millions of users doing a billion plus transaction. He works on building scalable systems and fraud detection platform to reduce customer risk. So prior to PhonePe, Anuj worked at Flipkart as product manager for trust and safety and helped build products to detect and solve issues relating to e-commerce, such as fake reviews, return frauds, and seller frauds. He has a postgraduate diploma in industrial management from NITI Mumbai. I'm also an alumni of Mumbai, though many years before Anuj possibly graduated. So welcome, Anuj, and I would like to invite you to throw some lights on digital payments. How PhonePe and other fintech companies have been experiencing exponential growth in the sector, and the associated attacks and prevention mechanisms in the fintech space. Over to you, Anuj.
Thank you, Sridhar sir, and rightfully said, you're a very super senior to me. So thanks for having me on this panel. So I would like to break the topic into three major streams. Let's first talk on the growth side, right? Uh, India has seen an exponential growth, right? It has retained the top spot with close to 25.5 billion real-time payment transactions, followed by China, which is close to 15.7. So at a scale level, I think we have significantly changed the landscape of the digital payments. The changes primarily came due to, low cost of smartphones, low prices of 4G data points, which enabled millions of Indian customers to switch from your basic phone to smartphone now. The lead of the digital payments, or the reason for growth, also started over the past decade or so. Primarily, and we have seen in the last 5 years, it has exploded out really well. So it started with convenience, ease of use case. So it started with your e-commerce, then with remittances, which was like, say, people traveling abroad, etc. Then it's moved to digital commerce, which was people moving from your physical stores to recharging and bill payments, making offline merchant payments, right, from their phones itself. The next phase is also going to come from the digital credit line, something like a buy now, pay later, etc. Products that are getting launched. If I look at the last year, the total digital payment transactions reached close to 55 billion, right, in terms of the number. This year, and this is combining all the digital payment modes in India, right? So this is, we are looking at close to 70 billion. In UPI itself, we were at 22 billion, and this year we are looking at 45 billion transactions that are happening around. And it includes everything from small value 10 rupee transactions to large value 1 lakh to, in mutual fund investments and everything over there. Still, cash is 10x, I think, which is close to 30 lakh crores or so in the Indian economy. So I believe that the digital payment ecosystem is still up for growth phase, up for the next decade or so. On the merchant side, if you look at it, it's just 50 million merchants, 25 million or so on a PhonePe itself has as the merchant network around. Uh, the UPI networks is invariably coming or coming close to surpassing the credit card and debit card transaction volumes together in terms of the merchant transactions itself. Your new innovations like BNPL, digital credit lines, which has got less to do with credit, more to do with the convenience, I think they will take the rise of consumerism up to very, very high. And the transaction volumes that we are seeing is going to further explode. With that, the problem starts towards the attacks on the fintech space, right? And what can we do? Again, over here, would like to actually break it down into two major parts. One is your security, channel security, or the infrastructure, and the infosec or the cyber security as an aspect out. I think India has done a fantastically well job in terms of defining the standards, building out the core network securities. You have two-factor authentications. Almost, India has one of the very, very lowest chargeback rates. At a channel level, what we have seen is there aren't much of a hacks that are happening in terms of the network level security out. Cyber security incidents that we see that Sir was also mentioning about, such as data leaks, etc., most seem to be stemming from the player level rather than an infrastructure level issue, which definitely needs to be tightened up, but really haven't seen across a very, very large volume of fraud per se or a financial loss happening. I think the last one was around somewhere on the Swift payment system in one of the banks that we had seen. But overall, if I were to say that is the security a major concern of the payments, technically the answer is no. What, however, is a concern is the frauds, right? And the frauds, as this sir was mentioning, right? Fraudsters have a unique way of collaborating. They are working together much better than I think we are, and they are doing classes, they are doing trainings, they are putting up, certain areas are only for this kind of a fraud. So there's a proper organized crime here. However, as per RBI, the total volume of fraud being reported for the FY 2021 across all digital channels is just 74,000 incidents, and volume-wise, it's just close to 200 plus crores. I believe that's a minuscule amount as compared to the overall, but I also believe that that is not the correct picture out. If I look at the I4C or the MHA portals or the NCRB reporting, the amount of frauds being reported are actually a little bit on the higher side. Most of the frauds that we see are happening through social engineering. There are certain identity theft case, there are takeover case which get compromised. The fake call centers, fake websites, social engineering, the low value frauds actually take the count to be much higher, and the inconvenience cost to consumers is still much, much higher. I do believe that almost all of us have received a fraud call somewhere where somebody says that your KYC is expiring, your SIM card is going out for it will not get serviced, or I'm calling from a player X and you have one cashback, or an SMS where it says that you have received that and you can earn part-time jobs, all right? And then it's taking to us a gambling website, to those loan apps, etc. So overall, in the digital payment space, I do believe that frauds are starting to become a concern, even though with network level security of 2FA, etc. So we'll definitely have to figure out the right mechanisms to attack these problems.
Okay. Thank you, Anuj. So it is heartening to note that the infra security, especially in the fintech sector, the channel level securities are robust, and that we have done a good job. But of course, the social engineering attacks are on the rise, and therefore we have to, curb them, as Dr. Rajput has pointed out. So we'll come back to you, Anuj, later on some of these aspects. So next, We have Tabagna Basu as one of the panel speakers. And Tabagna Basu is the co-founder of Data Secure. This is a startup that provides solutions to businesses to protect and secure data assets. He's an accomplished cybersecurity and AI ML expert, mentor at Stanford University and advisor to GIET University. Winner of multiple innovation competition, hacking challenges and hackathons in the industry around the world, from MasterCard, IBM, FIS, PwC, InMobi, and so on, Government of India, and many more. He's a graduate of Science Technology Institute, specializing in information security, cybersecurity training, and certificates. So, Tamagna, welcome to this particular session. And I would like to you to specify, specifically adversarial AI. Which you have innovated and which you do it for protecting your customers and data assets. So I would like to throw some you to throw some lights on adversarial AI and also some behavioral analysis that you do as part of your services. Over to you, Tamagna.
Sure, great. Thank you, sir. It's indeed a privilege to be here along with other eminent panelists. Um, so as you said, I think there are very good, strong points which Dr. Rajput and Anuj has pointed out. I think social engineering is on the rise. That's one of the most critical concern. And when it's a social engineering, if you talk about the deep underlying issue, which is the identity fraud and the account takeovers, right? Uh, so how can I impersonate you? How can I actually steal your identity and pretend that I'm you? And if I can successfully do it in various channels or various platforms, definitely I will be able to do whatever transactions possible on behalf of you. Now, when I say transaction, I'm not specifically talking about fintech. It's about in general every digital transaction I'm talking about. Be it login to your social account, be it your healthcare data, accessing your healthcare data, be it even probably obviously the payment aspect, right? Because your identity is compromised. Now, as I said, technology is for mankind, right? It shouldn't be the other way. So what happened is, obviously we have been doing a lot of innovation. We have been doing more digital, and as Anuj pointed out, I think the penetration of digital device, to be precise, the mobile phones are so high that even a person who doesn't have enough probably understanding of how to operate computers, they are still good at with smartphones, right? So with this, what is the problem is happening that that opens Pandora's box in terms of innovative attacks. Now, adversarial AI is nothing but how you can use AI for uh, offensive purpose, right? How you can use AI has artificial intelligence is nothing but is less a set of algorithms. That's what I prefer to believe, and you can use it for both as an offensive as a defensive, right? So initially it was mostly used and still used for anomaly detection point of view, but nowadays we've been seeing that you can use it for kind of doing different kind of offensive or attack. And as you know, just to put a name to that, is deep fake is one of the most most kind of innovative attack which I've seen a couple of years back. Where I can actually create a fake video of somebody, and if that gets circulated, that has multiple ripple effects. And as Dr. Rajput has pointed out, this can go to social biasing, this can go to social engineering, this can actually go to any point to convince anybody to do anything, right? So AI, using adversarial AI, not only you can create fake videos and circulate. Even last year I've done a research where you can do it in real time. So where actually it is highly possible today, even for example, if I can tell you that this call, instead of me presenting, it could be my clone is presenting, when attending this call, and you're having a conversation with an avatar, with a bot, I would say, who actually looks like me and who talks like me, and even it makes sense. It's not like normal chit chat, but probably with enough amount of knowledge and understanding of the domain, which probably I would have, right? And this is highly possible today with this advent of GPT-3 models, the new NLP models. You can train your model with your knowledge base, and that's exactly I have kind of done last year, and and I myself got scared with the result. So essentially, the idea is it actually can create a bot, and I've done it a simulation where I put my image, which actually talks to you in a real time, and I've simulated an attack of something called asking for money. So it's like, it's an attack was like I'm stuck in London. And like if you know, 10 years back there was a stuck in London attack came, which is the scam of over the email you get an email that I'm stuck in London. I'm your friend, and can you please send me some money? And I've taken to the next level where I say that instead of having an email, now it's going to be a video call where you can actually have a call with over Hangout or Google Zoom, and the person is a bot which is actually asking that I'm stuck somewhere, and can you please send me some money? So this kind of things. So one is deepfake, which was an offline attack. Now with the computations available, with the kind of memories, with the kind of GPUs available, this can be highly possible real time, and you don't have to train the model. That is again the most scary part, because with GPT-3, with other kind of NLP models are coming, you can actually get a pre-trained model, and I can just feed in my own data, which is basically, let's say, my accent and my way of talking, or the kind of words I use, speech of word I use, and using that I can create a model which actually behaves like me, right? So with that, that opens the next generation of social engineering attack, and we won't even probably imagine how it looked like that. Right. And now just on put cherry on the top, let's talk about metaverse a bit if you are interested to that. Now we're talking about alternate universe, right? Which is the metaverse, and crypto and all those things. And there anyway you have already been avtarified, right? Your avatar. And if that avatar now also looks so believable, that you actually convince that you can do more transactions in the world of crypto where there is no way you can track the trails of the money, and you actually going to be much more in a difficult situation, and it's going to be international now, not there is no border around that, right? I hope I'm able to convey the idea of the innovation happening on top of these trainings, and all the industry, fishing industry, and taking to the next level with the cryptos and everything. So the way I see it as a technologist, all these are very connected. We cannot think it as a separate problems, right? These are all interconnected, and that is where I see those guys, because the fraudster are also people like us with brilliant brain, brilliant minds. They are just connecting those dots, and that is what helping them to make us ahead of time. And the only way I think we can solve this problem, because if we can do those this kind of collaboration where private public partnerships, startups, enterprise partnerships, innovation, and probably existing solution partnerships, so that we can also connect the dots and we can stay ahead of the game like this. I think that is the only way to address this problem, because this problem gonna be growing. This problem is gonna be more innovative, uh, beyond our imagination, and this is gonna be more scarier the moment it starts impacting not only your financial data, with your healthcare data, with your other possible, all possible data, which is related to your identity, right? So that's why adversarial AI is very scary. And the other problem which we're trying to solve using something called behavioral AI, which is behavioral analytics. What we're doing is actually we can study the human behavior to identify that is this actually a real person or a bot. Second is, if it is a real person, is it actually Tamagna Basu who is interacting, or is it someone else is impersonating as Tamagna Basu, right? So behavioral AI is all about, is there a way I can capture various shape and form of your behavior when you're using a device? When I say device, it could be a computer, it could be a mobile, and we talk about gestures, right? Interactions. Like for example, I'm a left-handed person versus right-handed person, right? Now how I use behaviors and all these things. So with this kind of data, and again without violating privacy, there is enough way of creating a profile of a person, and with this profile you can actually uniquely identify me as a human, as an individual. Now what you're saying is this has a multiple different direction. What it helps is two ways. One is this makes security invisible, unlike other two-factor or multi-factor, which is basically a multiple layer, causes friction. This is invisible. This is a part of fraud risk management. It can come in. And second is, if this platform can be built so strongly, then social engineering can be reduced in a much exponential way, because what I'm claiming with the behavior is, even if your password is stolen, because my behavior doesn't match with your behavior, even if I try to enter your password or probably try to log in on behalf of you, I won't be able to log in or access your account, because the behavior which you have with the device, that is unique, and I cannot replicate that behavior. It's like a fingerprint. So the way, that's why it's called behavioral biometrics. That's another concept which is in industry, which came a couple of years back, and we're lucky enough to work on that as a technology. So these are the two innovative technology which I personally, as a technologist, really very excited, and I feel we should spend more time on this kind of technology to address this next generation thoughts which is coming and waiting for us in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Tamagna, for an excellent overview of adversarial and behavioral AI. And also, I mean, it's, the attacks are also becoming very sophisticated with the incorporation of AI and ML algorithms. Thanks very much for throwing some lights onto these new technologies. Now, I would go back to the speakers again for a round of questions. Dr. Rajput, you mentioned briefly about the Information Technology Act 2000 amended in 2008. The recent Information Technology Guidelines for Intermediaries and Digital Media Ethics Code Rules 2021, which was published in February of this year. This mentions about the significant social media companies to be responsible, right? So compared to the previous immunity which was provided to intermediaries by the IT Act 2000. So, are there still challenges to tracing the originator of the cybercrime investigations, especially in phishing attacks or even in the case of ransomware attacks? What are the challenges in terms of cyber forensics in tracing the originator with help from some of these social media companies such as Facebook, Google, and so on? Are you facing any challenges? Over to you, Dr. Rajput.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, fraud is basically committed with the anonymity technologies that are available. So if you take VPN, if you take IP masking services, if you take the bullet servers, if you take the different kind of anonymity and masking services that are available, they are first. Second, the identity theft is also a major thing. What Tamagna said about the faking the identities or the creating an identity which is fake in nature but seeming to be real. So these are basics of fraud. And if you see uh, in 2000 when Act was enacted, it was not anticipated or visualized that the frauds will take this kind of nature. But after 2008 also, when it was amended, social media was not that much prevalent in India and elsewhere also in the world. Now, what has happened after 2015-16, when transactions, particularly financial transaction, entertainment, and social media came together with the phone. So now what has happened due to convergence of all these technologies, phone has become a single instrument. So if you want to convince or a fool or we can say social engineer a person, all that means are together with a one device. So I have to convince you through a phone call, then ask you to click a button on the same device and ask you to just send the money on the same device. So it has become very easy. A single device and a multi-platform single device has basically contributed a lot. But there was no provision, particularly in IT Acts when 2008 it was amended, that this kind of frauds will be tackled. Now, what platforms are being used? It is not suppose example a Beam app or a Phone Pay or Google Pay are being used. Basically, when they are used, their platform is not being used for committing a fraud, but their platform is being used for transaction. So there is no breach in their platform. Breach is where the person is being reached through a different platform, asked to pay through a different platform, and convinced or send details on through a different platform. This is the reality. Now, what has happened through 2021 intermediary guidelines? There is nothing new in that guidelines. It is based on the Act of 2008. So only thing what mandatory thing has been made that significant social media players who have 50 lakh and above followers should have a compliance officer, should have a grievance redressal officer, and should have a nodal officer. Now, compliance officer is to compliance to 2008 IT Act and relevant rules. So, second is the grievance officer is to solve the grievance of the people, fake account and bots and social engineering things, morphing and all that things on social media. And third one is nodal officer. That nodal officer is particularly for law enforcement agencies or government agencies where they should exchange the information. But the significant social media players are very less used for committing frauds. Now, take example, VPNs used. VPNs are not significant social media players, but they are mostly used. The cloud masking services are not social significant media players, but they are being used. Now, these, because due to less used technologies, now I will take a Boteam. Boteam is an app which is not a social significant media player, but it is being used. So there are other apps because we just need a communication. Uh, Sometimes it is social media. Suppose Facebook is used for social information gathering, OSINT, and later on the fraud is committed through another tool. So data breach, suppose of XYZ social media is gathered and then data is studied and the fraud is committed through other means. So considering all these things, the point what I want to make is still even though there is a large hue and cry from the international no multinational companies, they don't want to be no complying all these issues, but there is a need because the less awareness of the users, then the law enforcement and government regulations are also slowly catching up. Third one, now data has become the most important or focal point. Now we need that a kind of responsible behavior from the social media players. And fourth one, for attribution to that particular criminal, the responsibility, accountability of the social media players, accountability of the platforms is very much needed. If that platform is not taking KYC, and when and the client is using it, then how to attribute that particular crime or that particular incident to a particular user? So for attribution, this is very important, and this will help in a long way. Still, we need that there should be more regulations for information exchange.
Thank you very much, sir. So your point is very valid. So the social media companies, cooperation with the cyber police and the national security is very much important for attribution. Thank you very much. Well point made. So now moving to Anuj. Anuj, we have seen a lot of security challenges with respect to digital payments, and we are actually projecting. I think we might actually meet 1 trillion UPI annual transactions in India soon. So given this huge, growth in fintech, especially in fintech transactions, payment transactions, does India need to do something different to safeguard customers from fraud, given this particular scenario? So what's your view on this? Over to you, Anuj.
Yeah, so that's a question which is very near and dear to me, and the reason, as I was mentioning, right, it is bound to go up. The transactions will go up, and if the expectation is that every consumer will become tech savvy, that's not the solution. Or if we think that we are going to educate customers and that will safeguard them fraud, it helps to an extent. But we have been saying for 20 years to not share your OTP. We still see the OTP frauds happening today. So India definitely needs to have a slightly different approach on the. So what are the challenges that we will run into? One is that the speed of innovation, right, at which we are progressing, it will continue. So every small change, every new feature will have 100x exposure than we are doing it even today, right? And so many participants coming in, there will be new players, there will be old players, etc. Expecting everybody to have the same security mindset or this expecting everybody to have the same security controls might not become. So that's where we will require some automated systems to govern this. At a overall level, what I believe, what we need to do is, I think India needs to now tackle this slightly differently, right? If you look at the value-wise, we might still be lower than let's say, a US or a China or a European market, but the volume-wise, we are already passing the numbers globally out. So I believe that we'll now need to have something which is India specific, something which keeps in mind the overall scenarios of frauds that we see. So I've broken it into three major parts. One is at a policy level. We need to recognize that the FRM or the frauds is different from cybersecurity. Now we need to have a dedicated section for payment frauds, build policies around on that, and what needs to be done. Uh, it is effectively where we need to figure out how will all the intermediaries work together. As Rajput sir was saying, that today the issue could be with one in a single transaction there are multi entities involved. We'll need to figure out how does, let's say, a telco come together, how does social media come together, how does the certain come together, and we look at this problem holistically rather than looking at the parts of the problem. Second, the most important point, which I believe, is at an ecosystem level. So, as I was just saying, that we have seen a unique collaboration between the fraudsters, where people are getting trained, where they're doing cross trainings in types of frauds out. At an ecosystem level, I don't think we have evolved towards a fundamental level where we are collaborating much better. So, what we definitely need is a ability to have, let's say, a central fraud repository. Uh, a collaboration between almost all entities given together. And given that the fact that money moves very rapidly in the ecosystem, right? So today there is let's say, a person who has a bank in Rajasthan transfers to a person in Karnataka who has a bank account in Maharashtra and which gets withdrawn from an ATM in West Bengal. That's the speed at which frauds are happening. We cannot have a manual way to handle these things. We need to figure out a digital way, an API integrated way, and a dispute management system where we are working together as a single unit rather than saying that all of them are working in their own areas. And lastly, I believe this is more towards the law enforcement side. I think we require a stricter framework around. The concept of a centralized cyber fraud management needs to come together. So there needs to be a central investigation agency, as I was just pointing out, right? The It becomes a state subject, and then that amount of time and effort it requires to, let's say, go and catch somebody for a 10,000 amount of fraud is something that basically takes away the entire area or power for a police to investigate and close that out. We need to figure out something on those lines where we are able to do this digitally and at a much rapid rate.
Thank you, Anuj. Thanks. Collaboration is the key. We have about roughly 5 minutes left, and Tamagna to say the last words. There is also a question in the chat box which says that despite all the security precautions that we take, the breaches continue to increase, right? So information security is normally called as market of lemons, in that the users do not know how safe they are when they buy security solutions, right? So Tamagna, what are the convincing methods and mechanisms that you have in order to provide complete security to your business clients? So what is the last word from you in about 3 to 4 minutes, please?
Sure, sure. So first of all, I think this is one of the most difficult and most controversial question, because the way I see it, nothing is 100% secure, and I think obviously I have the other panelists will have much more better answer. But I think as Anu just pointed out, I also kind of agree with him. Is kind of scale we are seeing, and the kind of scale is going to grow in near future, like 10x, 100x, and 1000x kind of range. So we as founder, we always say that you should be prepared for tomorrow's scale, not today's scale, or even not even tomorrow. Let's say next year's scale, right? That's how you play ahead of the game, and then, and we're lucky enough to say that at times we can do it very fast and adapt and pivot and probably change your pattern, unlike probably the legal infrastructures and others, which would be must be very challenging for Rajput sir, and obviously Anuj been managing the larger media kind of framework. But I think awareness and automation has to be there. Policy awareness, automation, and I think one of the point I just want to highlight. One thing we kind of I think haven't mentioned yet is how much of the frauds are unreported in the country. I mean, my belief is 90% fraud gets unreported. Now, why is that? That question is something we have to investigate as a consortium, as together. That why is that? And there are different reasons. And some of the reasons on top of my head is, one is obviously the embarrassment, the social embarrassment, the feeling of that thing that you got trapped. What will people think about it? Log kya kahenge? Second is obviously the amount of complexity it requires probably to recover that money, and is it worth you know going through that challenge when I'm just losing $5,000 or $2,000, right? So that is the second part which I really wanted to also request all the obviously eminent panelists here and other people who are attending this thing. when you're talking about a uh, 10 minutes, right? Your claim can be done in 5 minutes, right? And it's very much doable because we're already technological. I think the framework is in place. It's just, I think you have to, because this investigation, as rightly pointed out by Anuj, is involves multiple entities, be it telecom, be it legal, be it different states. If there is a way we can completely automate this pipeline and infrastructure and make it as simple as possible, like probably, as I said, buying a product in an e-commerce platform and probably asking for refund. I think that we will be much ahead of the game in terms of the managing and mitigating the fraud possibilities, because if that happens and through that process there will be more awareness. It's just learning by doing is what I'm saying. Is awareness is required, and that is one thing we have been doing in our company, is making security. How can I make security simplified for others, and make it consolidated. So awareness, storytelling problem, these are definitely has to be solved. How can I make it, in a way that is the language and the says and the connects is there, so that people even with this very limited education can understand the importance of security. But however, I think this recovery aspect, if we can think about that and if we can improve that framework, I think then that is where will be the real innovation. I believe can be possible. That's my take on this.
So thank you, Tamagna, and thank you for throwing some lights on what needs to be done in order to improve cyber security and cyber fraud prevention in the country. So we are almost running out of time. It's about 2 minutes. Dr. Rajput, there is a question for you. Can you throw some light on combined law across all countries for preventing cybercrime? I don't know whether combined law, a global law, will help or not. You are just half a minute answer for this, Dr. Rajput.
Yeah, sir. There are attempts to convention, but we have so far a Budapest Convention, which talks about, and then many countries are joined together. India is still not a party to it, but we can think on that lines, because we can't have a law, but we can have a convention. How information to be shared and what are the responsibilities of each country and related to the organizations which are coming from their countries. So there, as there is a common law for space, common law for seas, then common law may be there for cyberspace, but the answer is too difficult, because there are it's not a plain field. It's very complicated. There are many other issues are involving, because governance of internet is still so far is not democratized, is not by the nations, is by few organizations. And unless until the governance of internet is changed to a multi-country kind of model, which the UN is thinking about, the law or a common convention for cyber crimes or the cyberspace is a distance visibility, but we can hope for some.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Dr. Rajput, Anuj, and Tamagna, for an enlightening session. We are almost coming to the end. We have 24 seconds left. Over to you, Samriddhi.